Hello, welcome to Decisions Training. Today we're going to be going over decisions flow behaviors, talking about how we can use them, what they are, and some of the default behaviors that you may see in your common day-to-day use with decisions. So what is a flow behavior? A flow behavior is the property of a flow that tells how the flow should operate in a given context within decisions. Flow behavior can determine attributes of a flow such as their default inputs and outputs, where the flow can be used in decisions, types of steps that can be used in the flow, if the flow is initially visible in a designer folder, and whether the flow runs synchronously or asynchronously. When you create a flow in decisions that is not through the default create flow action in an entity folder, the type of flow created should match the context in which you are making the flow. For example, if I create a run flow inline field data field in the report editor, the default flow behavior should be the report field action handler flow, which is designed to run in this context. You can also change the default flow behavior by either going through the designer entity actions or in the flow editor properties of the flow that you are editing. So allow me to give you a demonstration on how to do this. So you can see here that I am inside of the decisions application on my local. I am going to show you how to change flow behavior here first. You right-click the flow in the designer folder, go to More, Advanced, and click Set Flow Behavior. Within here, you should see every type of selectable flow behavior that is possible to set a flow to in decisions. There are 58 in total. So right now, this is a default flow. This is just the typical flow behavior you get when you create a flow in a designer folder with the create flow action. Secondly, we can go inside of the flow, go to Properties, and under Settings, we can set the flow type here. It's called behavior type, but it's the same thing as flow behavior. And these are our options. I'm now going to demonstrate some of the more common flow behaviors you're going to see in decisions. I want to go over these because they show different aspects of how flow behavior is affected by the type of behavior that you select. So we're going to go over the simple flow, which I've already shown, the tile source flow, the post to flow handler, the user action flow, folder aware, and the active form flows. All of these demonstrate different aspects of how the flow can change based on what behavior type you set it to. So going over flow behavior, this is the default behavior when you select the create flow in a designer folder. It has a user-defined input and output. So you can create that and set that every time you make one of these flows, and is visible in the containing folder. In the designer folder, you can see this flow entity itself, and you can go in and perform actions on it. Next, we have the tile source flow. This is the default behavior when you create a tile source flow in a simple tile page control. You'll notice when you create this type of flow, the output on the flow's end step will be pre-configured to accept a particular type of output called tile data. You cannot change this output when the flow behavior is selected, and it's part of the flow's intrinsic properties. This output right here is what I'm talking about. This comes pre-configured on the output end step when you create a tile source flow. The next type I'd like to discuss is the post to flow handler behavior. This type of flow has no predefined inputs, nor can you set any. However, it comes pre-populated with data in the flow aside from just the global contents. So if I go to Data Explorer here, you can see I have extension data, project constants, new post account, split string from the step I created here, and all sorts of stuff you wouldn't find in the standard flow behavior. This flow is designed to take in a variety of data in a variety of formats from an API call. So I will show you that we are pulling right here from the call data, payload data. And this comes from the body of the request. So this here is Postman. Postman is a simple application used to simulate post calls and to be able to test your API endpoints. So right here in the body, I have put Gregory, my name, comma, test@decisions.com. So you can picture this as maybe this is an account, and this is the name going to be associated with the account. Now, when I run this, it's going to send a call to this flow right here, and it'll say account created for Gregory. What's actually happening is this payload data is coming directly from the body. It's unformatted, and you can use this as a very powerful tool to accept all types of API calls and then set up the logic in your flow to handle it. So here I've split it. I've split my string that I sent, the Gregory, comma, test decisions. Here's the character splitting it by, and then I'm creating data, and I'm putting it together as my output in the call request, as you saw right here. The next flow behavior I want to talk about is the user action flow folder aware. This is a necessary behavior to set your flow to in order to use user action flows. What is a user action flow? Well, it is a flow that you can add to a public folder that allows the user of that public folder to execute a flow. So if I go to this public folder right here and I select More under Pages and Add Flow as Action, this will allow me to add the user action flow. I'll call it Do This, and I'll go to pick a flow, but you'll notice no flows are showing up. This is because we don't have any flows in our project that have the behavior type user action flow folder aware. This is important because some parts of decisions won't pick up possible flows that you've created if those flows aren't set with the right behavior. So let's do that right now. We're going to go into our flow standard. We'll go into the properties, settings, and as I showed you before, we're going to set the flow behavior here. It's all the way at the bottom, user action flow. We'll save that, exit out, and now if we try to add a user action flow, we'll call it Do This again, you'll see the option comes up. I'll pick this, hit Add Action, and now we have this action Do This. Do This isn't going to do anything because we didn't configure that flow to do anything. But this is how you create a user action flow and why it's important for certain flows to have specific behaviors to be used in the context that you need them. Lastly, we're going to talk about active form flow behavior. Now, this rule flow behavior is not a behavior that you can select in decisions amongst the other 58 that I've shown you. It's one that's created when you create an active form flow within the form designer. So I'd like to demonstrate how to do that now by going into our active form flow, go to properties, and then we're going to add an active form flow to this. We'll just call it test flow. And now if we go to edit it, we have our flow designer, and it looks pretty similar to some of our other ones, but you might notice there's no input here. This would have to be configured within the form rules and not in the flow itself. Additionally, there are some other things that you can and can't do in this flow. So for example, if I were to add a step called the delay step, this is an asynchronous step, meaning it does not necessarily run in sync with the others. It is designed to delay every other step afterward and is classified as an asynchronous step. If we were to run this, even if it says saved on that outside and is not throwing a validation, it can give us some very funky behavior. For example, if you run in the delay step that I showed you right here, it will delay every step in this flow, even ones that come before this step. So you want to avoid asynchronous steps when you're in active form flows. The positive side of active form flows, however, is that you have access to these form rule steps. These are special steps that you only get with this particular flow behavior, and they allow you to manipulate the data that's on the form. So for example, if I had a control that was disabled, I could pick from my form data and choose a control to enable in this flow. Let's say a combo box. If that combo box was previously disabled, it now allows for me to enable it when this flow runs. I can also set control values. So what this will do is I can pick a form control in this. Let's say we want the primary drop down and we want to change the possible items that can be sourced from. The selected item, rather. We are going to set it to be a constant, and let's just call it test data. All right, so now, if I set this to run on startup in my flow, and I were to run this flow, my primary combo box, which is right here, would be set to test data, even if it's not in the list of items initially. There's a little bit more to these active form flows as well that you have to keep in mind. For example, you'll notice that the active form flows aren't showing that we created inside of this form. That's because these are listed as hidden. And in order to see hidden items, we have to go to folder view instead of list. We'll then click on these three dots over here and change the report, because what we're viewing right now is just a report of all the entities in this folder. So we'll hit change, and we want to show all folder items with hidden. And now look at this. Here is the rule flow that we just created today. If we were to go into this, we should be able to see our active form flow we just made. This is very important because if you want to check items in and out of the repository, you'll have to ensure that your rule flows are checked as well, even though they're hidden inside of the typical designer folder list. So it's important that when you move stuff to production, you enable these to be set with them. Otherwise, you'll lose your flow logic and your form will be messed up. That concludes our video on decisions flow behaviors.